Millionaire rejected by 20 women on blind dates. Only single mom from small town says yes. Hello, viewer. Thanks for joining us. Leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments, along with the city you're watching from. Now let's continue with the story. The woman across the table barely looked at him. Her eyes, they swept over Brian once, cataloging everything in a single dismissive glance, and then returned to her phone. 15 minutes. That was all the time Vanessa had given this 20th attempt at connection before her judgment came down like a guillotine blade. "I did not sign up for this service," she said, her voice as cold as the Manhattan evening outside, "to meet struggling artists. I have standards." Brian felt something crack inside his chest, not his heart. No, that had calcified years ago. This was something deeper. The last fragment of hope, perhaps. He managed a smile, the practiced one he had worn through 19 identical rejections, and signaled for the check. "Of course," he said quietly. "I understand completely." He did understand. He understood that Vanessa saw exactly what he had wanted her to see. A man of modest means, uncertain prospects, vulnerable in his ordinariness. And she had responded exactly as the 19 before her had responded, with contempt thinly veiled as disappointment. The drive back to his penthouse took 23 minutes. Brian counted every one of them. The doorman greeted him with professional warmth. The elevator carried him up 47 floors in silence. And when the doors opened onto his home, 3,000 square feet of architectural perfection overlooking the glittering jewel box of Manhattan, he felt nothing but the weight of beautiful emptiness. His phone rang. The screen showed a single word: Mom. He almost did not answer. These weekly calls had become exercises in deflection, in reassuring Margaret that her son was fine, successful, fulfilled. But something in him tonight, that broken thing, made him tap the green button. "Hello, Mother. You sound tired, dear." Her voice carried the gentleness that had sustained him through childhood, through his father's emotional distance, through every wound. "When did you last have a real conversation with someone?" Brian looked out at the city, millions of lights, millions of people, and him, alone at the top of his tower. "I am fine, Mom. Just a long day." "Brian," she used the tone that meant she saw through him completely. "Loneliness is not noble, son. Your father made that mistake. Do not follow him down that path." He closed his eyes. His father, dead 10 years now, had built his own walls and lived behind them until his heart simply stopped beating. The doctors called it an aneurysm. Brian suspected it was something else entirely. "I have to go," he said. After he hung up, he stood at the window for a long time. Behind him, on the mahogany desk that cost more than most people earned in a year, sat a photograph. Young Brian, maybe 8 years old, standing between his parents, all 3 of them smiling. He could not remember the last time he had smiled like that, with such unguarded joy. He thought about Jessica. 15 years since she had looked at him with those cold, calculating eyes and said, "I fell in love with your potential, Brian, not your poverty. Call me when you are somebody." So he had become somebody. He had built an empire. He had accumulated wealth beyond anything his working-class parents could have imagined. And in the process, he had proved Jessica's point. Because every woman he had met since then, before this experiment, had looked at him the way Jessica had, seeing not a man, but a portfolio, not a heart, but an asset. The experiment had been born from that wound. If everyone wanted him only for his money, then he would hide it. He would present himself as a failure, a struggling writer with modest dreams and uncertain prospects. And he would find someone who loved him anyway. 20 dates, 6 months, 20 careful performances of vulnerability, and 20 rejections, each one confirming what he had always suspected. He was fundamentally unlovable without his wealth. Brian picked up his phone and called the agency. Jennifer answered on the second ring, her voice professional even at this late hour. "Mr. Vance, I heard about this evening. I'm so sorry." "One more time," he said. "Sir, match me one more time, but somewhere different, somewhere real." He swallowed hard. "A place where people still believe in something authentic." There was a pause. Then Jennifer's voice, softer now. "I have someone in mind. She is outside our usual parameters. Small town, single mother. She explicitly stated she does not want wealth or status. She wants, and I quote, someone real." Brian laughed, but it sounded like breaking glass. "Someone real? Is that what I am? You could be, Mr. Vance." After he hung up, he stood at the window until dawn painted the sky. His reflection in the glass looked like a ghost, which was fitting, he supposed. He had been haunting his own life for years. Just one more chance, he thought. One more chance to be wrong about everything. The bookstore smelled of old paper and possibility. Amy unlocked the door at 5:30 in the morning, the way she had every morning for the past 5 years. Above her, in the small apartment where she had grown up, Josh slept in his bed covered with drawings of spaceships and dinosaurs. The ledger sat on the counter where she had left it the night before. Red numbers told the truth she kept hidden from everyone. 2 months until property taxes were due, and the money simply was not there. She brewed coffee in the small kitchen at the back. Her mother's mug, the one that said, "One more chapter," still sat in the cabinet. Amy could not bring herself to use it. Some griefs were too fresh, even after 5 years. At 6, she climbed the narrow stairs to wake Josh. He stirred as she sat on his bed, his dark hair falling across his forehead, Derek's hair. But Derek's hair was all Josh had gotten from his father. Thank God. "Morning, sweetheart," she whispered. His green eyes opened, her eyes, and he smiled. 8 years old, and already he carried more wisdom than his absent father ever would. "Is today a pancake day?" he asked hopefully. "Not today, honey. Toast and eggs." They ate together at the small table by the window, watching Millbrook wake up. Father O'Brien walked past on his morning rounds, raising a hand in greeting. Helen was already opening her antique shop next door. Main Street was stirring to life. "Will we always live here, Mama?" Josh asked, spreading jam on his toast with careful precision. Amy felt her throat tighten. "I hope so, sweetheart. I'm trying my very best." At 9, after she had walked Josh to school, the bookstore opened. The worn wooden floors creaked in familiar places. The shelves her father had built still stood straight and true. Her mother's handwritten recommendations were still tucked into favorite books, little love letters to stories she had cherished. Patty arrived at 10 with coffee and muffins from her cafe. She had been doing this since Amy's mother died, showing up with sustenance and stubborn affection. "You look tired, honey," Patty said, settling into the reading chair by the window. "I am always tired. When did you last do something for yourself?" Amy shelved books, her hands moving in practice patterns. "I do plenty for myself. I read. I spend time with Josh. I keep this place running. That is survival, not living." Patty's voice held the firmness of someone who had earned the right to speak truth. "You are 36 years old, Amy. Not 70. I am 36 with responsibilities. And you are also 36 and alone." The words landed like stones in still water. Amy stopped shelving. "Patty, I know Derek hurt you. I know trusting again feels like standing on a cliff edge. But honey, what if there is someone out there worth the risk?" That afternoon, Father O'Brien stopped by, his white hair catching the autumn light. He browsed the theology section, but Amy knew he was really checking on her. He had officiated her parents' wedding. He had baptized her. He had buried both her parents and stood beside her through her divorce. "Your parents would want you to be happy, my child," he said gently, "not just dutiful." After school, Josh did his homework at the counter while Amy helped customers. Mrs. Clarkson buying mysteries for her book club, old Mr. Pemberton searching for a first edition Steinbeck, Maria Rodriguez picking up children's books for her grandchildren. This was her world, small, manageable, safe. At closing time, Amy locked the door and swept the floors. She touched the shelves her family had built, feeling the grain of the wood under her fingers. This bookstore was all that remained of her parents, their love, their dreams, their belief that stories mattered more than profit. She could not let it die. That evening, after Josh was tucked into bed with a goodnight kiss and a chapter of his current favorite book, Amy found herself standing in her parents' room, untouched since her mother's death. Her father's jacket still hung on the chair. Her mother's shawl was draped over the footboard. She touched the shawl, brought it to her face, searching for any remaining scent of her mother. And for just a moment, she let herself cry. Not the careful, hidden tears she allowed herself during the day, but deep, wrenching sobs for everything she had lost. Then she washed her face, straightened her spine, and went to her own room. On her dresser sat an envelope. Patty must have slipped it into her purse during the coffee visit. Inside was information for a dating service, along with a note in Patty's bold handwriting. "You told me once that you would know the right person by how they treat people when no one important is watching. Maybe he is out there, honey. What if he is waiting for you to give him a chance?" Amy stared at the envelope for a long time. Every instinct screamed to protect herself. Derek had seemed perfect at first too. Charming, confident, full of promises. And he had left her with debts and a broken heart and a son who still asked why Daddy did not love them enough to stay. But Patty's words echoed. What if? Before she could overthink it, Amy opened her laptop and created a profile. She was brutally honest. Single mother, small-town bookstore owner, not wealthy, not looking for rescue, looking for someone real who understood that character mattered more than career. She hit submit, then closed the laptop quickly, as if the screen might burn her. Her phone buzzed 5 minutes later, a match notification. A man named Jay wanted to meet halfway, at a diner in Kingston. Amy's finger hovered over the accept button. Her heart hammered against her ribs. She thought about Josh's questions about his father. She thought about Father O'Brien's gentle concern. She thought about her parents, who had loved each other with such fierce devotion. She thought about hope, and she pressed accept. The diner sat exactly halfway between Manhattan and Millbrook. Though Brian did not know that when he arrived 20 minutes early, he chose a booth by the window where he could watch the parking lot. His hands would not stop shaking. This was it, the 21st attempt, the final test of a hypothesis he no longer believed in. A server approached, an older woman with kind eyes and tired feet. Brian recognized that particular exhaustion. His mother had worked as a waitress when he was young. "Coffee, honey?" she asked. "Please. And I am waiting for someone, a woman, auburn hair." The server smiled. First date jitters. I remember those. When Amy arrived, exactly on time, Brian felt something shift in his chest. She walked across the parking lot with her head up, moving with a grace that spoke of strength rather than fragility. Her green eyes found him through the window, and for a moment they simply looked at each other. Then she was inside, sliding into the booth across from him, and the air felt different, charged with possibility. "Jay," she said, "Amelia, or do you prefer Amy?" "My friends call me Amy." She smiled, and it transformed her whole face. "We can start with Amelia." He laughed, surprised by the genuine sound of it. When had he last laughed without calculation? The server appeared with menus and more coffee. Amy thanked her by name, Martha, and asked about her grandson's recovery from surgery. Martha's face lit up, and they talked for several minutes about the boy's progress. Brian watched this exchange with growing fascination. Amy had never met this woman before, yet she treated her with genuine interest and kindness. Most of his dates barely acknowledged servers existed. "So," Amy said, after Martha left, "tell me about your writing." Brian had prepared this part of his performance carefully. He talked about struggling with his craft, about rejection letters and self-doubt. He made his fictional failures sound painfully real because they were based on his actual fears, just transposed to a different arena. But something unexpected happened. As he talked, describing his imagined writer's life, he realized he was also describing the emotional truth of his real one. The isolation, the fear of being seen, the desperate hope for connection. "That sounds lonely," Amy said quietly. "It is." The honesty surprised him. "Very lonely." She nodded slowly. "I understand lonely. My husband, ex-husband, he left 6 years ago. My son was 2, and my parents—" Her voice caught. "My father died of cancer. My mother died 6 months later. They said her heart gave out, but I think she just could not bear the world without him." Brian felt something crack in his careful performance. "I am so sorry." They had the kind of love people write books about, 43 years married, and they still held hands. Amy's eyes shimmered. "I used to think everyone could have that. Now I wonder if I was naive." "Maybe not naive," Brian heard himself say. "Maybe just hopeful. And maybe hope is braver than cynicism." She looked at him then, really looked at him, and Brian felt naked under that gaze, as if she could see past Jay, past Brian Vance, down to the lonely boy who had never felt like enough. "Tell me about your son," he said, needing to shift focus away from his own sudden vulnerability. Amy's whole face changed. Love, pure and uncomplicated, softened every line. "Josh, he is 8, smart, funny, so tender-hearted it scares me sometimes." She pulled out her phone, showed him a picture, a boy with dark hair and green eyes, holding a drawing of what appeared to be a rocket ship. "He wants to be an astronaut," she said, "or a scientist, or a chef. It changes weekly." "He looks like you," Brian said. "He has your eyes." "Thank God for small mercies. He has his father's hair, but everything else, everything that matters, he got from my side." They talked for 2 hours. Time dissolved into conversation that ranged from books to dreams to the particular quality of autumn light. Brian found himself saying things he had never said to anyone, about feeling invisible in his own life, about wondering if success was worth the isolation it required. Amy listened with full attention, asking questions that showed she genuinely wanted to understand rather than judge. When Martha brought the check, Brian reached for it automatically, but Amy stopped his hand with hers. "We split it," she said firmly. "I pay my own way. I would like to pay, and I would like to be partners, not charity cases, even on a first date." They compromised. He paid for dinner, she paid for dessert, and when they walked to the parking lot together, neither seemed eager to leave. "I would like to see you again, Jay," Amy said. The words sounded surprised, as if they had escaped before she could second-guess them. Brian felt something dangerous bloom in his chest. Hope. Real hope, not the cynical hypothesis-testing kind. "I would like that too, very much," she smiled, got in her car and drove away. Brian stood in the parking lot for a long time after her taillights disappeared. In his pocket, his phone buzzed. A text from Jennifer at the agency. "How did it go?" He typed. She said yes to a second date. But what he thought was, she saw me, the real me, and she said yes. That changed everything. Or maybe, and this thought terrified him, it changed nothing at all, because the real him was still buried under a lie. Saturday morning arrived with the particular golden quality of late October. Brian drove to Millbrook in his smallest car, a nondescript sedan that cost more than it looked, and parked on Main Street just before 11. The town was exactly what he had imagined. Red brick buildings, window boxes still bright with autumn flowers, a church with a white steeple. People who nodded hello to strangers. He found Patty's Cafe easily. The sign above the door said, Main Street Cafe, good food, better friends. Amy was waiting at a table by the window. She wore jeans and a green sweater that matched her eyes, and when she saw him, her face lit with genuine pleasure. "You found it," she said. "Your directions were perfect." A woman approached their table. Late 50s, salt and pepper hair, eyes that assessed him with the protective intensity of a mother bear. "So you are Jay," she said. "I am Patty, Amy's best friend and chief protector." "Patty!" Amy's voice carried warning and affection in equal measure. "Just so we understand each other," Patty said to Brian, her smile pleasant but her eyes serious. "She has been through enough. If you hurt her, you will answer to this entire town. Are we clear?" "Crystal clear," Brian said, "and for what it is worth, I have no intention of hurting anyone." Patty studied him for a moment longer, then nodded. "Good. Now, the apple pie here is legendary. I recommend it." After she left, Amy laughed softly. "I am sorry." "She means well." "She loves you," Brian said. "That is not something to apologize for." They ate lunch. Then Amy took him on a walking tour of Millbrook. She showed him the library where she had spent her childhood, the park where Josh played, the church where her parents had married, and where Father O'Brien still led services. "This is my whole world," she said as they stood on Main Street, watching the afternoon unfold. "Some people would find it small, limiting. But to me, it is everything that matters." Brian looked at the antique shop, the hardware store, the post office where people stopped to chat. He thought about his penthouse, his corner office, his world of glass and steel and calculated risk. "It is beautiful," he said, and meant it. They walked to the bookstore. "Reed's Books," the sign said. "Established 1972. Inside, Brian stopped breathing for a moment. The space was filled with warm light and the particular smell of old books, wooden floors worn smooth by decades of footsteps, shelves built with care rather than efficiency, a reading corner with mismatched chairs that invited lingering. "My grandfather built those shelves," Amy said softly. "My father expanded the store. My mother, she was the heart of it. She knew every customer by name, knew their tastes, could recommend the perfect book for any mood." Brian touched a shelf, feeling the craftsmanship in the joinery. "This is real work, built to last. Everything my family did, they did with that philosophy. Nothing disposable, nothing cheap, just good work done right." A bookshelf in the corner tilted slightly. Brian knelt, examining the leg. "Do you have tools?" he asked. "You do not have to." "I want to." So Amy found her father's old toolbox, and Brian spent the next hour repairing the bookshelf. His hands, accustomed to keyboards and screens, remembered older skills. His own father had been a carpenter before arthritis stole his trade. Amy watched him work. "You are good at this." "My father taught me." He said, "A man should know how to build and fix things, that everything worth having requires maintenance and care." He sounds wise. He was. Brian tightened a screw, tested the stability. He could not fix himself. All that skill, all that knowledge, and he could not repair his own heart. Amy knelt beside him. "What happened to him?" "He died 10 years ago. Aneurysm. But I think he died long before that. He just forgot to fall down." "I am sorry," Amy said. And then, surprising him, "Do you know what I think? I think we carry our parents' unfinished business. Their wounds become our wounds, and maybe healing ourselves is how we honor them." Brian looked at her. This woman with her quiet wisdom and her green eyes that saw too much. "When I was little," she continued, "my father told me that books are how we learn to be human. They show us who we could be, who we should not be, and who we actually are. Maybe people are like that too. Maybe we are all stories in progress. What kind of story are you? Brian asked. She smiled. Still being written. Yours. Rough draft. Lots of revision needed. They laughed, and the sound filled the bookstore like light. That evening, they had dinner at a small restaurant on Main Street. Nothing fancy, comfort food served by people who knew Amy's usual order. And Brian found himself relaxing in a way he had not relaxed in years. As they walked back to the bookstore where their cars were parked, Amy said, "I had a really good day, Jay. Thank you for coming all this way." "I would come much farther," he said honestly. They stood in the pool of light from a street lamp. Amy looked up at him, and Brian saw her making a decision. "Would you like to meet Josh?" she asked. "Tomorrow. Sunday dinner. Nothing fancy, just if you are ready for that." Brian's throat tightened. Meeting her son. Crossing from casual dating into something real. "I would be honored," he managed. After she drove away, Brian sat in his car, staring at the darkened bookstore. His phone rang. His mother. "Brian, dear, how are you?" And for once, he told the truth. "I am. I think I might be happy, Mom." There was a long silence. Then, "Oh, sweetheart, I have been praying for this." That night, alone in a modest hotel room in Kingston, Brian could not sleep. He thought about Amy's question, "What kind of story are you?" A tragedy in the making, he thought, because every day this continues, the lie grows larger, and when she finds out, and she will find out, it will destroy everything. He should tell her. Tomorrow, at dinner, before Josh gets involved, before this goes any further, he should tell her. But the coward in him whispered, "What if she rejects you once she knows? What if Jay is the only version of you anyone could love?" "Tomorrow," he promised himself. "I will tell her tomorrow." It was the first of many tomorrows that never came. Sunday morning arrived with church bells and autumn sunshine. Brian drove to Amy's address with his stomach in knots. He had barely slept, spending the night arguing with himself about whether to confess before meeting Josh. He should have told her on the first date. He should tell her now, before her son gets involved. He should, but he did not. Amy's home was a modest two-story house at the end of a tree-lined street. Flower boxes that had seen better days. A porch with a swing, a bicycle with training wheels beside the steps. Josh answered his knock. 8 years old, dark hair falling into green eyes, studying Brian with the serious intensity of someone who had learned to be careful with trust. "Are you Mr. J?" the boy asked. "I am. You must be Josh. Your mom has told me wonderful things about you. Did she tell you I can do long division?" "She did not mention that. That is impressive." Josh seemed to accept this. He opened the door wider. "Mama is cooking. She said I should be polite and offer you something to drink." The house smelled of roasting chicken and herbs. The living room was small but warm, filled with books and framed photographs and Josh's artwork covering the refrigerator. Amy appeared from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a dish towel. "You found us, Josh. Did you offer our guest a drink?" "I was just about to," Josh said with dignity. "I am fine. Thank you," Brian said. To Amy, "Your home is lovely. It is small, but it is ours." Another knock at the door. Father O'Brien entered, white hair gleaming, wearing casual clothes but carrying the unmistakable authority of his calling. "Amelia, my dear, and this must be Jay." He extended his hand. "Michael O'Brien, friend of the family." His grip was firm, his eyes assessing. Brian felt examined and found. Not guilty, but perhaps suspicious. Dinner was simple and perfect. Chicken, roasted vegetables, homemade bread. Grace before the meal, Father O'Brien leading in a prayer that mentioned gratitude for new friends and old blessings. Josh peppered Brian with questions. What do you do? Where do you live? Have you ever been to space? Do you like dinosaurs? Do you like my mom? Brian answered carefully, staying close to truth where possible. He wrote, he lived in the city. No, never been to space. Dinosaurs were fascinating. And yes, he liked Josh's mom very much. My dad does not live with us, Josh said matter-of-factly. He left when I was little. Do you have kids? I do not. Why not? Josh, Amy said gently. Remember what we talked about. Personal questions. It is all right, Brian said. He looked at Josh seriously. I guess I have not met the right person to have children with. That is a big decision. Important. You want to make sure you will be there, you know, that you will not leave. Something shifted in Josh's expression. My dad left. I know, and that was wrong of him. You deserve better than that. After dinner, Josh asked for help with a science project about the solar system. Brian found himself on the living room floor with construction paper and markers, building a model while Josh explained everything he had learned about Jupiter's moons. From the kitchen, Amy watched them. Father O'Brien stood beside her, drying dishes. He is good with the boy, the priest observed quietly. He is. What do you know about him, my child? Amy was quiet for a moment. I know he treats people kindly. I know he listens when people speak. I know he fixed my bookshelf without being asked. I know, she paused, I know he makes me feel safe. And what do you not know? She met his eyes. Father O'Brien had a way of asking the questions people avoided. I do not know why someone like him is still alone at his age. I do not know what he is running from or hiding from. I do not know. She smiled sadly. I do not know if I can trust my judgment anymore. Father O'Brien dried another dish thoughtfully. Derek taught you to doubt yourself. But Amelia, your judgment is sound. You see people clearly. So if something feels off, pay attention. And if everything feels right, he patted her shoulder. Sometimes we have to be brave enough to trust the good things too. In the living room, Josh was showing Brian his drawings. One of them stopped Brian cold. This is my family, Josh explained. That is Mama. That is me. And that is... He pointed to an empty space beside the drawn figures. That is where my dad should be, but he is not there. Brian felt something twist in his chest. You are a very talented artist, Josh. Mama says drawing helps when you are sad. She draws too, sometimes. I find her pictures hidden in books. Later, after Father O'Brien had left and Josh was getting ready for bed, Amy walked Brian to his car. Thank you for today, she said. Josh does not warm up to people easily. But he liked you. He is an incredible kid. You have done an amazing job with him. I worry, Amy admitted. He needs good examples of what men should be, how they should treat people, what keeping promises looks like. Brian felt the weight of his deception like stones in his pockets. Amy, yes. He looked at her face, golden in the porch light. Honest and trusting and opening her life to him. He should tell her, right now, but the words stuck in his throat. Could I see you again next weekend? She smiled. I would like that. I would like that very much. Before he left, Josh appeared in the doorway in his pajamas. Bye, Mr. J. Will you come back? If your mum will have me, yes. Good. You can help me finish the solar system project. I still have to do Saturn's rings. In his car, driving back to his empty hotel room, Brian's phone buzzed. A text from his mother. How was dinner, dear? He typed. I met her son. He is... Mum, he is wonderful. Her response came immediately. Brian, please, you need to tell them the truth before this goes further. He stared at the text for a long time, then typed, I will. Soon. I promise. But even as he sent it, he knew he was lying to his mother now too. The web was growing. and Brian was the spider at its center, trapped by the very strands he had spun. The weeks that followed took on a rhythm. Every Friday evening, Brian drove north from Manhattan. Every weekend, he immersed himself in Amy's world, and every Sunday night, he drove back to his real life, carrying the weight of his double existence. October gave way to November. The trees lost their leaves, the air turned sharp with approaching winter, and Brian fell deeper in love with a life he had no right to claim. He became a familiar face at Patty's cafe. She served him coffee and maternal scrutiny in equal measure, her initial suspicion gradually softening into something like acceptance. "You show up when you say you will," she told him one morning. "That matters around here. We have seen too many men who make promises they do not keep." Helen from the antique shop invited him to dinner. He sat at her table with her late husband's empty chair and listened to stories about 47 years of marriage, about love that deepened rather than dimmed with time. "The secret," she said, pouring him more wine, "is honesty, even when it is hard, especially when it is hard. My Thomas and I, we told each other everything, the good, the bad, the shameful. And we loved each other not despite our flaws, but including them." Brian smiled and nodded, the words landing like arrows in his chest. Father O'Brien remained more reserved. The priest watched Brian with eyes that seemed to see past performance to the guilty conscience beneath. One Sunday after church, Amy had invited him to attend services with them. Father O'Brien pulled him aside. "Walk with me," the priest said. It was not a request. They walked through the church garden, past graves that dated back 2 centuries. "That boy is attaching himself to you," Father O'Brien said finally. "That is a sacred responsibility. I know. Do you? Josh has already been abandoned by one father. If you are not serious about this, if you plan to leave when things get difficult or inconvenient, it would be kinder to leave now." Brian stopped walking. "I am not going to leave them." Father O'Brien turned to face him fully. "Everyone says that. Jay. Derek said that. But actions speak louder than words. And there is something—" He paused, choosing his words carefully. "There is something you are not telling them. I can see it. The way you dodge certain questions, the vagueness when Amy asks about your life in the city." Brian felt his blood run cold. I am not asking you to confess to me. That is between you and God, and more importantly between you and Amelia. But I am telling you," his voice became steel, "if you deceive that woman, if you break that child's heart, you will have to answer for it, in this life or the next." That evening, Brian helped Josh with his homework at Amy's kitchen table, math problems about fractions. Josh struggled with the concept of parts making a whole. "I do not get it," he said, frustrated. "What if I told you that you're half your mum and half your dad?" Brian said. "2 parts that make one whole you." Josh considered this. Then, "But I am not half my dad. He is not here. So what am I?" Brian felt like he had been punched. "You are completely yourself. Your mum, she is raising you to be a good man. That is what makes you whole." "Are you a good man, Mr. J?" The question hung in the air. Amy stood in the doorway, dish towel in hand, waiting for his answer. "I try to be," Brian said quietly, "but I make mistakes. Everyone does." "Did you ever do something really bad?" Josh asked with a child's directness. "Yes. I have hurt people I cared about because I was scared." "Did you say sorry?" Not enough. Not in the way I should have." Josh nodded, satisfied with this honesty. "Mama says saying sorry is important, but doing better is more important." After Josh went to bed, Brian and Amy sat on her porch. The November night was cold, but she had brought out blankets and hot tea. "He is getting attached to you," she said. "I know. Jay, I need to know this is real for you, because if it is not, if you are just passing through or experimenting or—" She swallowed hard. I can handle being hurt again. I have survived worse. But Josh, he has already lost one father. I cannot let him lose another. Brian took her hand. This is real for me, more real than anything has been in a very long time. It was true. It was also not the whole truth. I was thinking, he said, changing the subject before she could ask more questions. Maybe I could be here for Thanksgiving, if that is not too much too soon. Amy's face lit up. I would love that. Father O'Brien always joins us, and Patty and Helen. Nothing fancy, just family. Family. The word landed in Brian's chest like a homecoming. That night, in his hotel room, his business phone rang. The one he'd been ignoring for weeks. Marcus Chen's name appeared on the screen. Brian answered with dread. Marcus, where the hell have you been? The board is asking questions. You have missed 3 meetings. What is going on? I am dealing with some personal matters. Personal matters. Brian, we are in the middle of merger negotiations. I need you focused. I am focused. On what? Because it is not on the company. There are rumors. People saying you have been seen in some small town upstate. What are you doing? Panic iced through Brian's veins. Nothing. It is nothing. Just, I will be at the next board meeting. I promise. After he hung up, he stared at his reflection in the bathroom mirror. Who was looking back at him? Brian Vance, billionaire CEO, or Jay, the struggling writer who had found unexpected love? Neither felt entirely real, or perhaps both were real, and that was the problem. His phone buzzed, a text from Amy. Josh says goodnight. He wanted me to tell you that you are invited to his birthday party in April. Fair warning, it is months away, but he is already planning. Thank you for today, for everything. Brian typed back, I would not miss it for the world. And he meant it, which was why, when he should have been planning his confession, he was instead planning how to maintain his double life for months more. The autumn festival came to Millbrook. Brian found himself helping set up booths on Main Street, hanging decorations, being absorbed into the community fabric as if he had always belonged. Helen put him to work moving furniture. Patty drafted him into cooking duties. Josh claimed him for the pumpkin carving contest. They won 3rd place. Josh's design, a rocket ship blasting through stars, had been intricate and ambitious. Brian had helped with the technical aspects, but the vision had been purely Josh's. We make a good team, Josh said, holding their ribbon with pride. We do, Brian agreed, his heart breaking and mending simultaneously. That evening, the festival ended with a bonfire in the town square. Brian found himself standing with Amy in the circle of firelight, Josh on his shoulders, watching embers rise toward stars. This is what happiness looks like, Amy whispered. Right here, this moment. Brian held her closer. I know, and he did know. He knew exactly what he had found, which made what he was doing unforgivable. Later, as they walked back to Amy's house, Josh, half asleep and heavy, Amy took Brian's hand. I think I am falling in love with you, Jay, she said quietly. I did not mean to. I tried not to, but, he finished, but I am, and it terrifies me. Brian stopped walking. He should tell her, right now. The words formed on his tongue. My name is not Jay. I am not who you think I am. But instead, he said, I am falling in love with you too, Amelia, and it terrifies me as well. She kissed him then, soft and tentative and full of hope. And Brian kissed her back, knowing he was kissing her under false pretenses, knowing he was building something beautiful on a foundation of lies, knowing that when it collapsed, and it would collapse, the damage would be catastrophic, but he could not stop. He loved her too much. He loved Josh too much. He loved this life too much. So he kissed her in the firelight, and he lied with every breath, and he told himself, tomorrow. I will tell her tomorrow. It was becoming his refrain, his prayer, his damnation. Tomorrow, always tomorrow, never today. The rain came on a Wednesday evening in mid-November, the kind of steady downpour that turns the world soft and introspective. Amy locked the bookstore's front door at closing time, but Brian had stayed behind, shelving the new shipment that had arrived that afternoon. They worked in comfortable silence, the rain drumming against the windows like a heartbeat. Amy alphabetized fiction, while Brian handled the reference section. Months ago, she would have refused his help. Now, his presence felt natural, essential even. "I need to tell you something," Amy said suddenly. Brian looked up from a stack of travel guides. "All right." She sat in the reading chair by the window, watching rain streak the glass. He joined her, settling into the chair opposite, waiting. "Derek, my ex-husband. Everyone thinks he just left. That is the story I let people believe because it is easier than the truth." She twisted her wedding ring. No, her grandmother's ring, the one she had moved to her right hand after the divorce. "The truth is worse. You do not have to." "I want to." Her voice was steady, but her hands shook slightly. "We met when I was 18. He was the town's football hero. Handsome. Charming. Everyone loved him. My parents. They had reservations, but they supported my choice because they trusted my judgment." Rain filled the silence as she gathered her thoughts. "We married when I was 21. He had plans, big plans. He was going to make it as a professional athlete. When that did not work out, he tried coaching, then personal training. Then he had an idea for a sports equipment business. Every failure made him angrier, more bitter." Brian felt his chest tighten. "Did he hurt you?" "Not physically, but words. Words can be weapons, too. He blamed me for holding him back. Said I was too content with small-town life, too unambitious. He started disappearing for days, coming home smelling of perfume and excuses. Amy? When Josh was born, I thought it would change things. Derek promised it would. He held our son and swore he would be different. For 3 months, he tried. Then the debts started coming." Her voice cracked. "Credit cards I did not know about. Business loans he had forged my signature on. $30,000. $30,000 of promises he never intended to keep." A tear tracked down her cheek. She wiped it away impatiently. "He left when Josh was 2, just gone one morning. No note, no explanation. 6 months later, divorce papers came from a lawyer in Nevada. He had moved there with a woman he met online, someone who believed his next big plan would work." "I am so sorry," Brian said, his voice rough. "The worst part." Amy looked at him directly. "I blame myself. I thought if I'd been more supportive, more exciting, more something, he would have stayed. It took me years to understand that his leaving had nothing to do with my worth. He was broken in ways I could not fix." Brian knelt in front of her chair, taking her hands. "You did nothing wrong. Intellectually, I know that. But here," she touched her chest, "here I still carry the shame. The fear that I will make the same mistake again. That I will trust the wrong person and Josh will pay the price. Is that why you were so hesitant about dating?" "Yes, because what I loved about Derek at first was his confidence, his big dreams, his charm, all the things that ended up being masks for selfishness and cowardice." She looked at Brian with eyes that held both fear and hope. "What I loved about you from the start was your honesty. You do not pretend to be perfect. You admit your struggles. You treat people with kindness even when no one is watching." Brian felt something shatter inside him. She loved him for the honesty he did not have. "I watched you help Martha at the diner," Amy continued. "The way you asked about her grandson, the way you left that generous tip even though you said you were struggling financially. I watched you fix my bookshelf without being asked. I watched you with Josh, so patient and genuine, and I thought, this is a good man. A real man." He could not breathe, could not speak. I need you to know, Amy said, her hands gripping his, that if you ever lied to me, if I found out you had been deceiving me about who you are, I could not survive it. Derek broke my trust, but losing you after believing in you, that would break something deeper, something that might not heal. Amelia, his voice came out strangled. I am not saying this to pressure you. I'm saying it because you deserve to know what you mean to me and what honesty means to me. She cupped his face in her hands. Promise me that whatever else happens, you will always tell me the truth, even when it is hard, especially when it is hard. Brian closed his eyes. He should tell her right now, this moment, but the words would not come. Instead, he heard himself say, I promise. It was the cruelest lie yet, because he meant it. He wanted to be the man she thought he was. He just did not know how. They held each other as rain continued its steady percussion against the windows, and Brian understood with terrible clarity that he had trapped himself in a prison of his own making. Every day that passed made the truth more devastating. Every moment of her trust made his deception more unforgivable. Later, after Amy had gone home to Josh, Brian sat alone in his hotel room. He pulled out his laptop and began typing a confession. 3 times he wrote it, 3 times he deleted it. The words looked hollow on the screen. Inadequate. How do you explain betrayal to someone you love? His phone rang. His mother. Brian, you sound terrible. What is wrong? Everything, Mom. I'm in love with a woman who thinks I'm someone else. I'm living with a child who trusts me. I'm part of a community that has accepted me. And all of it is built on lies. Then tell the truth. She told me tonight that if I ever lied to her, it would break her completely. Mom, her ex-husband destroyed her faith in people. If I tell her now, if you tell her later, it will be worse. I know. He ran his hands through his hair. I just need to find the right time, the right way. There is no right way to confess betrayal, dear. There is only honest or dishonest. And every day you wait, you choose dishonest. After they hung up, Brian stared at the ceiling. His mother was right, but knowing what was right and having the courage to do it were different things entirely. Saturday morning brought clear skies and cold sunshine. Brian arrived at Amy's house to find Josh waiting on the porch, bundled in a jacket too big for him, holding a fishing rod. You said you would teach me, Josh said accusingly. Brian had said that weeks ago, a casual promise made without thinking. I did say that, but Josh, I do not actually know much about fishing. That is okay. Father Mike says the point of fishing is not catching fish. It is spending time together. So they went to the small lake at the edge of town. Father O'Brien had been right. Brian knew nothing about fishing, but he and Josh sat on the dock with their lines in the water, and they talked about everything and nothing. Do you think my dad ever thinks about me? Josh asked suddenly. The question landed like a stone in still water. I think, Brian chose his words carefully, I think your dad probably thinks about you often. But I also think he is too broken inside to know what to do with those thoughts. What does broken inside mean? It means sometimes people hurt so much that they run away from everything good because they do not believe they deserve it. Josh considered this. Are you broken inside, Mr. J? The directness of children, like surgical instruments. Yes, Brian said honestly, I am. But you are here. You did not run away. Not yet, Brian said. So quietly Josh might not have heard. They sat in silence for a while. Then Josh said, I have been praying for a dad. Is that okay? Brian's throat closed. Of course it is okay. I prayed for God to send someone who would not leave. Someone who would teach me things and play with me and love my mom. Josh looked up at him with those green eyes so like Amy's. Do you think God sent you? How do you tell a child that you are the answer to a prayer wrapped in a lie? I think, Brian said slowly, that we found each other, and that is a kind of gift. Are you going to marry my mom? That is, that is something your mom and I would need to talk about. And even then, these things take time. But you want to, Josh, because I want you to. I decided you can be my dad if you want. The simplicity of it, the trust. Brian felt something inside him crumble. Buddy, that is one of the kindest things anyone has ever said to me. But you do not really know me very well yet. I know you are nice to Mama. I know you helped fix her bookstore. I know you remember things I tell you. I know you came to my school play even though you had to drive a long way. Josh counted on his fingers. Father Mike says you can tell what people are like by what they do, not what they say, and what you do is good. Brian pulled the boy into a hug. This child who had decided to trust him, this child he had no right to hold. I promise, he whispered into Josh's hair, I will never hurt you on purpose. It was the only honest promise he could make. That evening, Amy found them on her couch. Josh had fallen asleep between them, his head on Brian's shoulder, his small hand clutched in Brian's larger one. You are good with him, she said softly. He is easy to love. He asked me yesterday if you were going to be his new dad. Amy's voice trembled slightly. I told him we had to take things slow. But Brian, Jay, he's already attached. If this does not work out between us, it will work out, Brian said with a conviction he did not feel. You sound so certain. Because I have never been more certain of anything. I love you, Amelia. I love Josh. I love this life we are building. She kissed him then, soft and sweet, with Josh sleeping peacefully between them. A picture of domestic perfection built on sand. Later, after Josh had been carried to bed and Amy had fallen asleep in Brian's arms, he lay awake in the darkness. His phone buzzed on the nightstand. A text from his assistant. Board meeting Tuesday. Your presence required. He had been neglecting his business for months, missing meetings, delegating responsibilities. His partners were getting suspicious. Marcus Chen had called twice this week alone. Brian knew he could not maintain this double life much longer. The walls were closing in. Soon, very soon, he would have to choose, or the choice would be made for him. The phone call came at 7 in the morning. Brian was having breakfast at Patty's Cafe when his business phone, the one he kept silenced most of the time, began vibrating insistently against his leg. Marcus Chen, again. Brian excused himself, stepping outside into the November cold. Marcus, where are you? I'm looking at security footage from your building. You have not been to the office in 3 weeks. I'm handling some personal business. Personal business? Brian, we are in the middle of crucial negotiations. The board is asking questions. Your behavior is erratic. What is going on? Through the cafe window, Brian could see Amy laughing at something Patty had said. Her face was lit with genuine joy. I am fine. I will be at Tuesday's meeting. I promise. You better be. Because if you are not, Brian, there are people who would love to see you lose control of this company. Do not give them ammunition. After he hung up, Brian stood in the cold for several minutes. His two worlds, so carefully separated, were beginning to collide. He went back inside. Amy looked up with a smile that made his chest ache. Everything okay? She asked. Just work stuff. I forget sometimes that you have a whole life outside of Millbrook. Your writing, your apartment in the city. She reached for his hand. Do you ever regret spending so much time here? I worry we are taking you away from your career. Never, he said fiercely. Never. But that afternoon, as he drove back to Manhattan for the first time in weeks, the weight of his deception felt crushing. His penthouse looked like a museum. Cold, impersonal. The home of someone who did not know how to live. The board meeting was tense. Marcus watched him with calculating eyes. Others asked pointed questions about his recent absences. I have been scouting locations for a new project, Brian lied. Upstate, it requires extensive research. The lie came so easily now, too easily. After the meeting, Marcus cornered him in the hallway. "What is really going on, Brian? This is not like you. You have never been distracted. You have never put personal life ahead of business. Maybe I am changing, or maybe you are hiding something." Marcus leaned closer. "You know I have resources. If I wanted to find out what you're doing with all that time upstate, I could." It was not quite a threat, but close enough. "Stay out of my personal life, Marcus. As soon as your personal life stops affecting our business." That night, Brian stayed in Manhattan, his first night away from Millbrook in weeks. Amy called at bedtime, video call with Josh. "We miss you," she said. "The house feels empty." "I miss you too. Both of you." Josh appeared on screen in his pajamas. "When are you coming back?" "Friday, I promise." After they hung up, Brian stood at his window overlooking the city. 200 miles away, Amy and Josh were in their home. His real life was there, but his lie was everywhere. The next morning, he woke to missed calls. 7 of them, all from unknown numbers. Then his phone rang again. Jennifer from the dating agency. "Mr. Vance, I'm calling to warn you. Someone has been asking questions about you, about the arrangements we made. I did not disclose anything, but..." Who was asking? "I do not know, but they knew about the J persona. They knew about the small town." "Mr. Vance, I think someone is investigating you." After he hung up, Brian sat on the edge of his bed, his hands shaking. Marcus. It had to be Marcus. For the rest of the week, Brian lived in a state of paranoia. Every look felt suspicious. Every question seemed loaded. He returned to Millbrook on Friday as promised, but the joy he usually felt crossing into that small town was tainted by dread. Something was coming. He could feel it. The town was in crisis mode when he arrived. A development company wanted to buy out several Main Street businesses. Millbrook was fighting back, but they needed strategy, legal advice, business expertise. The town meeting was that night. Brian sat in the back, watching the community rally. Then someone asked, "Is there anyone here with business experience who could advise us?" People looked around. Patty pointed at Brian. "Jay, you read a lot. Maybe you could help." Before he knew what he was doing, Brian was standing at the front of the room, explaining negotiation tactics, legal loopholes, leverage points. He spoke with an authority that came from years of corporate warfare. Amy watched him with surprise and something else. Recognition, maybe, or suspicion. Afterward, as they walked home, she said, "You know a lot about business for a struggling writer." I read extensively. Research for my work." "What exactly do you write, Jay? You have never really told me." His mouth went dry. "Thrillers. Corporate thrillers." "Can I read something you have written?" "It is all still in draft form. Not ready." She stopped walking. In the streetlight, her face looked troubled. "Sometimes I feel like I do not really know you. Like there are parts of yourself you keep hidden. Everyone has private parts of themselves. That is true. But usually by now..." "6 months, Jay. We have been together for 6 months. I have told you everything about my life, my failures, my fears, my ex-husband's debts. And you, I know you grew up in Queens. I know your father died. I know you struggle with your writing, but the rest..." She shook her head. "It feels like a sketch, not a complete picture." He took her hands. "What do you want to know?" "I want to know why a man like you, smart, capable, kind, is still alone at 45. I want to know what happened that made you so afraid of connection. I want to know..." She paused. "I want to know if what we have is real for you, or if I am just a character in one of your stories." "This is real," he said urgently. "You are the most real thing in my life." It was true, and it was not enough. That night, Brian lay awake beside Amy. She slept peacefully, trusting him completely. And he made a decision. Thanksgiving was in 2 weeks. After Thanksgiving, he would tell her everything. He would confess, accept the consequences, and hope, pray, that her love was strong enough to survive the truth. It was a fragile plan, a coward's plan, but it was the only one he had. Thanksgiving morning arrived with frost on the windows and the smell of roasting turkey. Brian stood in Amy's kitchen, peeling potatoes while Josh set the table with elaborate care. "Mr. J, you have to put the fancy napkins," Josh instructed. "Mama says Thanksgiving is fancy." The fancy napkins. Got it. Father O'Brien arrived first, bringing wine and his steady presence. Then Patty with pies, Helen with flowers. The small house filled with warmth and conversation and the particular grace of gathered community. They sat around the table, Amy at one end, Brian at the other, Josh between them. Father O'Brien led grace. "Heavenly Father, we give thanks for this food, for this fellowship, and for second chances. We ask your blessing on this family, formed not by blood, but by choice and love. Guide us toward truth and courage. Amen." Brian's eyes met the priest's. Father O'Brien knew, maybe not the specifics, but he knew something was wrong. The meal was perfect, laughter and stories flowing as easily as wine. Josh recited what he was thankful for: his mom, his school, his friends, and Mr. J, who taught him that broken things could be fixed. After dinner, after the others had left, Brian and Amy stood on the porch. Josh was inside, drawing a picture of the day. "I've something to tell you tomorrow," Brian said. Amy turned to look at him, her face illuminated by porch light. "That sounds serious." "It is, but tonight I just want to enjoy this. Us. This family we are building." She kissed him. "I love you, Jay. I know I have not said it before, but I do. Completely." "I love you too," he said, the words truth and tragedy together. "Whatever you need to tell me tomorrow, we will face it together." If only she knew what she was promising. That night they made love with a tenderness that felt like goodbye. Amy fell asleep in his arms, peaceful and trusting. Brian held her, memorizing the weight of her, the sound of her breathing, the way she fit against him. Tomorrow he would destroy this. Tomorrow he would tell her the truth and lose everything. But tonight he held her and pretended tomorrow would never come. In the pre-dawn darkness, he lay awake, the confession letter in his jacket pocket downstairs. He had written and rewritten it 12 times. The words were as ready as they would ever be. "My name is Brian Vance," he whispered into the darkness, practicing, "and I need to tell you who I really am." But the universe had other plans, because at 7 in the morning there was a knock at the door. Father O'Brien stood on the porch, his face grave. In his hands was a tabloid newspaper, and everything shattered like glass. Amy's hands trembled as she held the newspaper. Brian watched her face cycle through confusion, disbelief, and finally, something worse than anger, understanding. "Billionaire's cruel game," she read aloud, her voice hollow. "Tech mogul Brian Vance poses as poor man to deceive small-town single mother." Brian reached for her. "Amy, please, do not touch me." Her voice was ice. Do not you dare touch me." The article was detailed. Photographs of him at Manhattan galas in tuxedos that cost thousands. His penthouse with its obscene city views, his company headquarters, and beside them photos of Jay in Millbrook, helping in the bookstore with Josh, kissing Amy. "While playing dress-up as a struggling writer," Amy read, her voice breaking. "Vance drove 100 miles each weekend to the charming Hudson Valley town of Millbrook, where he found his perfect mark." "It was not like that," Brian said desperately. "Not like what? Not like you lied about everything? Not like you used me as some kind of experiment?" She looked up. tears streaming. "Who are you?" "My name is Brian Vance. I was going to tell you today. I swear, I was going to tell you." "Today? Today you have had 6 months?" Josh appeared in the doorway, his face confused and frightened. "Mama, why are you crying?" Amy tried to compose herself, but it was too late. Josh saw the newspaper, saw the photographs. Is that you, Mr. J?" "Josh, I can explain. Your name is not J." Outside, car doors were slamming, voices calling out. Patty burst through the front door, Helen right behind her. "Amy, honey, are you—" "Oh, God!" Patty saw the newspaper, her face transformed from concern to rage. "You son of a—" "Not in front of Josh," Father O'Brien said quietly but firmly. More voices outside, reporters, cameras. Someone was shouting, "Miss Reed, how does it feel to be deceived by a billionaire?" The community formed a protective wall. Neighbors Brian had come to know, people who had accepted him, now looking at him with betrayal and fury. "You need to leave," Father O'Brien said. "Now, Brian, I need to explain." "You have done enough," Patty said, her arm around Amy's shoulders. "You have done more than enough." Brian looked at Amy. She was holding Josh, both of them crying. The boy he had promised not to hurt, the woman he loved more than his own life. "Amelia, please, just let me—" "You lied." Her voice was dead. "You lied about everything. Your name, your life, everything. Derek left me, but you were here. You were part of our lives. You made promises to my son, and all of it was a lie. Not all of it. What I felt, what I feel. And that was real. Was it? How would I know? I do not even know who you are." Josh's drawing fell from Brian's wallet. The one from months ago. My family. The 3 of them together. Amy saw it. Something in her face broke completely. "Get out," she whispered. "Get out of my house. Get away from my son. I never want to see you again." "Amy, get out!" She was screaming now, the sound raw and animal. "Get out! Get out! Get out!" Patty physically pushed him toward the door. Brian stumbled onto the porch, into a crowd of reporters and cameras. Questions shouted from all directions. Flashbulbs blinding. He pushed through them, got to his car. In the rearview mirror, he saw the community closing ranks around Amy's house, protecting her from the chaos he had created. The drive back to Manhattan passed in a blur. His phone rang constantly. Marcus Chen, his lawyers, his PR team, his board members. He answered none of them. When he reached his penthouse, paparazzi were camped outside. His face was on every news channel. The story had gone viral. Inside, the silence was crushing. He stood at the window overlooking the city, this glittering monument to his success, and it meant nothing. He pulled out his phone, opened his photos. Amy, laughing in the bookstore. Josh, holding his fishing rod. The 3 of them at the autumn festival, a family he had no right to claim. Brian collapsed then, completely. The sobs that tore from his chest sounded like something dying, because something was dying. The best version of himself. The man he had been in Millbrook, the man who fixed bookshelves and taught fishing and was learning to be brave enough for love. That man was gone, and all that remained was Brian Vance, billionaire, liar. The man who had destroyed the only real thing he had ever found. His phone buzzed, a text from his mother. "I am coming over. Do not do anything foolish." He laughed. It sounded like breaking. "Too late, Mom. I already did." In Millbrook, Amy sat on her bedroom floor, holding Josh while he cried. Patty had stayed, standing guard against reporters. Father O'Brien was downstairs, fielding phone calls, protecting them from the world's cruel curiosity. "Why did he lie to us, Mama?" Josh kept asking. "Why?" "I do not know, baby. I do not know." But she did know. She knew exactly why, because she had been foolish enough to trust again, to believe that a man who seemed too good to be true might actually be good and true. She had been wrong, again, and this time the cost was not just her heart. It was her son's trust in the world, in people, in the possibility that adults could be counted on to keep their promises. That night, long after Josh had finally cried himself to sleep, Amy stood at her window looking at Main Street. The bookstore's sign still glowed. The town she loved still stood. She would survive this. She had survived Derek. She had survived her parents' deaths. She would survive Brian Vance. But something in her, some capacity for hope, for trust, for believing in fairy tales, that was broken beyond repair. She had trusted again. She had loved again. And she had been devastated again. Some lessons, it seemed, had to be learned over and over until they finally destroyed you. 3 days passed, in a blur of silence and shame. Brian did not leave his penthouse. He did not answer his phone. He existed in a liminal space between the man he had been and whatever hollow thing remained. The news cycle fed on his story with gleeful cruelty. Think pieces about wealthy men and their games. Social media dissecting every photograph, every moment of his deception. Someone had found Amy's bookstore's website and left hundreds of comments, some supportive, some mocking, all invasive. He had destroyed her privacy along with her trust. On the 4th day, his mother arrived. Margaret let herself in with the key he had given her years ago, the one she had never used until now. She found him sitting in the dark, unshaven, still wearing the clothes he had driven home in. Brian. Her voice carried the particular tone that had gotten him through childhood fevers and teenage heartbreaks. Get up. I cannot. You can. You will. She opened the curtains. Winter sunlight flooded the room, harsh and unforgiving. Now go shower. I'm making coffee. 20 minutes later, clean but feeling no less broken, Brian sat at his kitchen island while his mother moved through his space with the efficiency of someone who had raised a family in much smaller quarters than this. Tell me everything, she said, setting coffee in front of him. So he did, all of it. The experiment born of Jessica's cruelty, the 20 rejections, meeting Amy and falling in love with her honesty while drowning in his own lies. Josh's trust, the community that had welcomed him, the mounting guilt, the plan to confess that came too late. Margaret listened without interrupting. When he finished, she was quiet for a long time. Your father, she finally said, never told you he loved you. Did you know that? Brian looked up, surprised. What? Robert, your father. He loved you fiercely, but he could not say the words. His own father had been the same way. Emotional silence passed down like a genetic disease. She sipped her coffee. You spent your whole childhood craving approval you could not see, love that was never spoken, so you learned to doubt that you were lovable at all. Mom, then Jessica confirmed your worst fear. She did not want you. She wanted your potential, your future wealth. And when that was not immediate enough, she left. So you built walls. You became successful enough that you never had to risk rejection again. You could always tell yourself that women wanted your money, not you. It was safer than risking your heart. Brian felt tears burning behind his eyes. I am so tired, Mom. I am so tired of being afraid. I know, dear, she took his hand, but here is what you need to understand. You were not testing those 20 women. You were testing yourself. You were looking for proof that you were unlovable. And when Amy saw past your performance to the real you, when she loved the vulnerability you showed her, it terrified you, because then you had to face the truth. What truth? That you were always lovable, that the wound was never about your worth. It was about your belief in your worth. Margaret's eyes were fierce with maternal love. You found the thing you said you wanted, authentic love, and your response was to sabotage it before it could reject you first. The words landed like stones in water, ripples spreading outward to touch everything. "But I did not sabotage it first," Brian said. "She found out. She rejected me. So I was right all along. I am not lovable." "No," Margaret's voice was sharp. "She did not reject you. She rejected the lie. There is a difference. The man she fell in love with, that vulnerable, honest, kind man. He was real, Brian. He was you. You just wrapped him in deception because you were too afraid to trust that he was enough." Brian put his head in his hands. "I hurt her so badly, Mom. And Josh. God, Josh. He trusted me. He wanted me to be his father. And you betrayed that trust. Yes, you did something cruel and cowardly." She squeezed his hand. "Now the question is, what are you going to do about it?" "There is nothing I can do. She will never forgive me." "Maybe not, probably not. But Brian, forgiveness is not the point. Taking responsibility is. You spent 6 months living a lie. How long are you willing to spend living the truth?" He looked at his mother. This woman who had loved him through every failure, who saw him clearly and loved him anyway. "I do not know how," he admitted. "Start by being honest, completely honest, not to win her back. You may never win her back. But because honesty is the only foundation worth building on. Stop hiding, stop performing, just be the man she saw in you. Be him for real this time." After his mother left, Brian sat at his laptop. He opened his email and found hundreds of messages, press requests, interview offers. His publicist begging him to let her craft a statement. He ignored them all and composed a single email to one journalist, a woman known for tough interviews and tougher questions. Someone who would not let him hide behind corporate speak or carefully crafted apologies. "I want to tell the truth," he wrote. "All of it. No conditions, no pre-approved questions, just honesty." Her response came within minutes. "When and where?" That night, Brian could not sleep. He kept seeing Amy's face. The moment comprehension had hit, the way trust had shattered into something beyond repair. He kept hearing Josh's voice. "Your name is not Jay." At 3 a.m, he got up and started writing. Not a statement, not an apology, just truth. His truth about growing up feeling invisible, about his father's emotional distance, about Jessica's rejection and the wound it had created, about building wealth as armor against vulnerability, about the experiment and what it had really been testing. He wrote until dawn, 20 pages of raw, unfiltered honesty. Then he read it through and realized something. This was not for Amy. This was for him. Understanding himself did not undo the harm, but it was a start. The interview was scheduled for the following week. Prime time, national broadcast. His lawyers begged him to reconsider. His publicist quit. His board called an emergency meeting. Brian ignored them all, because his mother was right. He had spent 6 months living a lie. It was time to spend whatever remained of his life living the truth. The interview took place in a stark studio. No makeup artists softening his appearance. No carefully staged setting. Just 2 chairs and the truth. The journalist, Rachel Martinez, known for making politicians sweat and CEOs squirm, studied him with sharp intelligence. "Mr. Vance, thank you for agreeing to this interview. Thank you for conducting it without conditions. Let us start at the beginning. Why did you create this elaborate deception?" Brian took a breath. This was it. No hiding, no performance. "Because I am fundamentally insecure about whether anyone could love me without my wealth." The directness seemed to surprise her. "That is unusually honest. I am trying something new. It is called not lying." He smiled, but it held no humor. 15 years ago, I was engaged to a woman named Jessica Whitmore. When she learned my plan to live modestly for several years while building my company, she ended our relationship. She told me to call her when I was somebody. Those words, they created a wound I never healed from. So you became somebody. I became wealthy. I became powerful. And I told myself it proved she was right. That without money, I was nothing. That everyone wanted me for what I had, not who I was. And the experiment, I thought, if I hid my wealth, if I presented myself as struggling and ordinary, I could prove that theory. That no one would want me unless I was rich. 20 women rejected me. I told myself it confirmed everything. Rachel leaned forward. But then you met Amelia Reed. Hearing her name spoken aloud was like a knife between his ribs. Yes. What made her different? She was not different. I was different with her. For the first time in 15 years, I let myself be vulnerable. Not because I was brave, but because the role I was playing required vulnerability. And she responded to that vulnerability with kindness and acceptance. His voice cracked. She saw the real me, the scared, uncertain, desperately lonely me, and she loved that person. But that person was wrapped in lies. Yes, and that is unforgivable. Did you love her? Brian closed his eyes. I love her, present tense, completely, her and her son. They showed me what authentic life looks like, what real connection feels like, what family could be, and because I was too much of a coward to trust that I deserved those things, I poisoned them. You made promises to her 8-year-old son. I know, a boy who had already been abandoned by his biological father. I know. Tears were streaming down his face now. He did not wipe them away. That is the worst thing I did. Josh trusted me. He asked me to be his father, and I let him believe in me while knowing I was living a lie. There is no excuse for that. There is no justification. I hurt a child. I hurt a woman who had already been betrayed and broken. I hurt a community that welcomed me, and I did it all because I was afraid. Afraid of what? Afraid that if they knew who I really was, Brian Vance, billionaire, broken by old wounds, they would not want me. So I gave them Jay, a struggling writer, a man with nothing. And when they accepted him, when they loved him, I could tell myself it proved I could be loved for myself. He looked directly at the camera. But it proved nothing, because Jay was a lie. And you cannot build real love on false foundations. Rachel was quiet for a moment. What do you say to people who think this was a cruel social experiment, that you used Amelia and her son as test subjects? I would say they are partially right. It started as an experiment, but it became my life. The problem is, I entered their lives under false pretenses. My intentions changed, but my deception remained, and that is unforgivable. Do you want her back? What I want does not matter. What matters is that she and Josh heal from what I did to them. What matters is that I take responsibility. What matters is that I spend whatever time I have left proving that the man she loved, the vulnerable, honest, kind man, was real. Not to win her forgiveness. Maybe she will never forgive me, but because she deserved to meet that man in the first place. Have you spoken to her since the exposure? No. She asked me to leave her alone, so I'm respecting that wish. The kindest thing I can do now is give her space and work on becoming someone who deserves, not her love, necessarily, just someone who deserves to exist in the world without causing harm. The interview continued for another 30 minutes. Rachel asked about his company, his wealth, his plans. Brian answered every question with the same unflinching honesty. When it was over, he felt emptied out, hollow, but somehow lighter. His phone exploded with responses. The interview went viral. Public opinion remained divided. Some people sympathetic to his wounds, most condemning his actions. But beneath the noise, there were quieter voices, people who recognized themselves in his fear. People who understood the particular hell of feeling unlovable. His mother called, "I am proud of you, dear. That took courage. It took too long. Yes, but you did it. That matters." That night, Brian began the real work. Not grand gestures, not dramatic declarations, just small, consistent actions toward becoming the person he wanted to be. He started therapy, real therapy, not just crisis management. He worked with a psychologist who specialized in attachment wounds and helped him understand how his father's emotional absence had shaped his entire adult life. He reconciled with his board, stepping back from day-to-day operations. He was still CEO, but he delegated more, trusted others more, stopped using work as a hiding place, and he began planning a foundation, not to buy redemption, but because Amy had been right about one thing: wealth used wisely could make a difference. He just needed to figure out how to do it right. The envelope arrived by courier 2 weeks after the interview. Heavy paper, Amy's handwriting. Brian's hands shook as he opened it. Inside was a single page, typed formal. "I watched your interview. I do not forgive you. I may never forgive you. But I recognize that you are trying to take responsibility, and I acknowledge that I'm writing because you expressed in that interview a desire to make amends. If that desire is genuine, I have a suggestion. Do not give me money. Do not try to save my bookstore or my life. I do not want your charity, and I certainly do not want to be a line item in your guilt redemption ledger. But main streets all over America are dying. Small businesses like mine are drowning under pressure from corporations and online retail. If you genuinely want to make amends, do something about that. Not for me, for everyone like me. Create a foundation that helps revitalize small-town businesses, but do it right. Hire people who actually know these communities, people like me, as paid consultants. Use your resources, but do not pretend to be the savior. Listen more than you direct. Empower rather than rescue. If you do this, I will consider being part of it. Not because I forgive you, but because the work matters more than my feelings. Do not contact me directly. If you move forward with this, have your people contact Father O'Brien. He will coordinate. This is not an opening for reconciliation. This is a professional opportunity to do something meaningful. Do not confuse the two. Amelia Reed. Brian read the letter 5 times. It was cold, formal, angry, and it was also a door, not to her heart, but to action, to purpose, to using his wealth for something beyond himself. He called his lawyers that afternoon. 3 weeks later, the Millbrook Main Street Foundation was incorporated, not named after him, not centered on his wealth, but structured to empower small-town business owners to revitalize their communities. The founding board included Amy, Patty, Helen, and 3 other small-town business owners from across the region. Brian provided the funding. They provided the expertise. He did not attend the first meeting. Father O'Brien represented him, presenting the structure, the funding model, the commitment to long-term support. Amy and the others grilled the priest for 2 hours, suspicious of hidden agendas and strings attached. "He wants nothing," Father O'Brien finally said. "No publicity, no naming rights, no control over how you distribute funds. He is providing resources. You are providing wisdom." "That is the arrangement." Patty, ever skeptical, asked, "And what does he get out of it?" "He gets to sleep at night knowing he's doing something meaningful. That is all." The foundation's first grants went out 2 months after Brian's interview. 6 small towns, 12 businesses, real money for real needs, not handouts, but strategic investments in inventory, marketing, building improvements. Amy coordinated it all. She traveled to other communities, consulting with business owners, sharing what had worked in Millbrook. She was brilliant at it. Her combination of practical experience and genuine empathy made her invaluable. Brian watched from a distance. He received monthly reports from the Foundation's board, pictures of revitalized main streets, stories of families able to keep businesses their grandparents had built. He never saw Amy, but he saw the impact of her work. And for the first time in his adult life, his wealth felt like something other than armor or burden. It felt useful. 5 months after the exposure, he received another letter. Again, Amy's handwriting. His heart raced as he opened it. The Foundation is working. You provided the resources without trying to control the narrative. That matters. Thank you. I am not ready to speak to you. I do not know if I will ever be ready. But I wanted you to know that what you are doing, it is good. It is helping people. That has to count for something. Josh asks about you sometimes. I tell him the truth. That you lied, that it hurt us, but that you are trying to be better. I do not know if that is the right thing to tell him, but I refuse to teach him that people cannot change, even people who hurt us. I am healing. Slowly. Josh is in therapy. So am I. We are learning to trust again. Not you, necessarily, but trust in general, that some people can be counted on, that not everyone lies. Millbrook has closed ranks around us. The reporters eventually left. Life returned to something like normal. The bookstore is doing better. Ironic, since all the publicity brought customers. Even from bad things, occasionally, good emerges. I hope you are healing too. I hope you are finding peace. Not because I have forgiven you, but because the world has enough suffering without adding to it deliberately. Amelia Bryan sat with that letter for a long time. She was healing. Josh was in therapy. They were rebuilding without him, as they should. He wrote back a short note. Thank you for telling me. I am glad you are healing. I will continue the work, not to earn forgiveness, but because it matters. Take all the time you need. Take forever, if that is what is required. Be well. Brian, he did not expect a response, and he did not get one, but something in him, some tightly held hope that he could fix this, that grand gestures could undo harm, finally released. This was not a story about winning her back. This was a story about becoming someone worth being. Whether or not she ever saw that person was not up to him. The months continued. The Foundation expanded. Brian threw himself into the work, not from guilt alone, but from genuine belief in the mission. He met other business owners, heard their stories, learned about communities he had never known existed. He remained in therapy. He reconciled further with his mother, spending time with her in the Queen's house where he had grown up. He began to understand his father not as a villain, but as another wounded person doing his best with limited tools. He dated no one. He focused on work and healing and trying to build a life that had meaning beyond acquisition. And then, one autumn day, almost a year after the exposure, he received a phone call from Father O'Brien. Brian, the Foundation is having its 1-year anniversary celebration in Millbrook next Saturday. You should come. I do not think you should come, the priest repeated, his tone making it clear this was not optional. You do not have to speak. You do not have to do anything but be present. But you should be there. You have earned that much. Has Amy? Amy is prepared for your attendance. That is all I will say. So the following Saturday, Brian drove north to Millbrook for the first time in a year. His hands shook on the steering wheel. He had imagined this moment 1,000 times, and now that it was here, he wanted to turn back. But he continued, because Father O'Brien was right. He had earned, not forgiveness, not reconciliation, but perhaps presence, the right to witness what his resources had helped create. Main Street was closed off for the celebration. Booths set up, music playing. Business owners from across the region gathered to celebrate their survival, their success, their mutual support. Brian parked on a side street and walked slowly toward the gathering. People recognized him. Some nodded, some turned away. Most just watched with careful neutrality. And then he saw her. Amy stood at the center of it all, talking with a group of business owners, her face animated and alive. She wore a simple dress. Her auburn hair caught the afternoon sun, and she looked whole, healed, strong. Their eyes met across the crowd. For a moment, the world narrowed to just that connection. Then she nodded once, acknowledgement, not welcome, and turned back to her conversation. It was enough, more than enough. Brian stayed at the edges of the celebration. He listened to speeches, heard business owners thank the foundation, watched the community celebrate its renewal. No one mentioned his name. The foundation's work stood independent of his guilt, and that was exactly right. As the day drew to a close, as the sun began to set, Father O'Brien appeared at his elbow. "Walk with me," the priest said. They walked through the quieting town. Past the bookstore, now thriving, past shops that had been struggling a year ago and were now stable, past evidence of hope made tangible. "You have done good work," Father O'Brien said. "The foundation has done good work. I just provided resources. Do not minimize it. You could have thrown money at the problem and walked away. Instead, you listened, you empowered, you stayed in the background and let others lead. That takes wisdom and humility." They stopped in front of the church. "She is healing, you know," the priest continued. "She and Josh both. It has been hard, but they are finding their way. I am glad. She is ready. If you wanted to speak with her, just to speak, nothing more, she is ready for that." Brian felt his heart stutter. "I do not want to cause her more pain." "You will not. She has set boundaries. She knows her own mind. But there is something she needs to say to you, and perhaps something you need to say to her, not for reconciliation, but for closure, understanding, whatever you want to call it." "When?" "Now. She is at the bookstore. After everyone has left. She will wait for you there." Brian stood frozen. A year of imagining this moment, and now that it was here, he could not move. "Go," Father O'Brien said gently. "Be honest, be humble, and listen more than you speak." The walk to the bookstore took forever, and no time at all. The lights were on inside. Through the window, he could see Amy sitting in the reading corner, alone, waiting. Brian knocked softly on the door. She looked up. Their eyes met, and slowly she walked to the door and opened it. "Hello, Jay," she said. Then, correcting herself with deliberate precision, "Brian, hello, Amelia. Come in." They sat in the reading corner where they had sat so many times before. The space between them felt like an ocean. Amy held her coffee mug like a shield. Brian held nothing, his hands empty and uncertain. "Thank you for seeing me," he began. "I almost did not." Her voice was steady, careful. "For a long time, I wanted to hate you. It would have been easier. But Father O'Brien kept telling me that you were doing the work, actually doing it, not just performing contrition, and I needed to see for myself. The foundation. The foundation is good, really good, not perfect, but genuine. You gave up control. You empowered people who know what they are doing. You stayed in the background." She looked at him directly. "That surprised me. It should not have. You told me what would matter. I listened. Derek never listened. He talked, he promised, he performed, but he never actually listened." She set her mug down. "You hurt me, Brian. You hurt Josh. You took our trust and you crushed it under the weight of your insecurity and your fear. I know. Do you? Do you understand what it did to me? I spent 2 years rebuilding myself after Derek, learning to trust my own judgment again, opening my heart again, despite every instinct screaming at me to stay safe. And then you made me look foolish. You made me doubt everything I believed about myself." Brian felt tears burning. "I am so sorry." "Sorry is not enough. Sorry is words. What matters is what you do after sorry." She leaned forward. "You asked in your interview if you could love someone else without believing you were lovable yourself. Here is my answer. No, you cannot. Because you will always be testing them, always waiting for them to leave, always sabotaging out of fear. You are right. I know I am right. And I know because I have been doing the same thing. After Derek, after you, I have been terrified to trust. Terrified to believe that anyone could be honest, and that is no way to live." They sat in silence for a moment. "Josh asks about you," Amy finally said. "Not constantly, but sometimes. He asks if you are being a good man now, if you are keeping your promises to other people since you broke yours to us." Brian's voice cracked. "What do you tell him?" "I tell him the truth, that you lied to us, that it hurt, but that you are trying to do better, and that sometimes people who hurt us can still change, not for us, for themselves. I know I have no right, but I would like to tell him I am sorry, just once, face to face." "So he knows." Amy was quiet for a long time. "Not yet, maybe not ever, but not yet. I understand. What I am trying to say, Brian, is that I see what you are doing, and I do not forgive you. Not completely. Maybe not ever. But I acknowledge your effort, and that has to count for something. It counts for everything." "Does it?" She studied him. "Or is this just a more elaborate performance, the humbled billionaire doing penance? How do I know this is real?" "You do not. You cannot. All I can do is keep showing up, keep doing the work, not for you, for me, because the alternative is going back to who I was, and I cannot live that way anymore." Amy stood and walked to the bookstore window. Outside, Main Street was quiet now, the celebration over, the town settling into evening. "I have been thinking," she said slowly, "about what Father O'Brien said, about forgiveness not being the same as trust. I cannot trust you, Brian, not romantically, not in the way I did before. That is broken beyond repair. I know, but I can respect the work you are doing, and I can coexist in the same space without hating you. Is that enough?" "It is more than I deserve." She turned to face him. "Stop saying that. Stop with the self-flagellation. It is not helpful. What is helpful is being honest about what you did, taking responsibility and moving forward, not as the guilty party begging for scraps of forgiveness, but as a person genuinely committed to being better." "You are right. I know I am right." A small smile ghosted across her face. "I am always right." "Despite everything," Brian laughed. It sounded rusty, but real. "There it is," Amy said. "The real laugh, not the performed one. That is what I fell in love with, not Jay, not the character, but those moments when your real self broke through, when you laughed genuinely, when you listened with full attention, when you fixed that bookshelf not because you had to, but because you wanted to. That was me, the real me. I believe you. Now," she walked back to her chair, "here is what I propose. We work together professionally through the foundation. We maintain boundaries. We are civil. We maybe, eventually, become something like colleagues who respect each other, but nothing more. Is that acceptable?" "More than acceptable." "Good." She stood, signaling the conversation was ending. "Now, I need to get home. Josh has a sleepover tonight, but I like to be there when he gets back tomorrow morning. Sunday pancakes are our tradition." Brian stood as well. They walked to the door together. As she unlocked it, he said, "Amy, yes, for what it is worth, and I know it is probably worth nothing. I loved you. I love you. Not Jay's performance. Me, the real, broken, terrified me. I loved you with everything I had. I just did not know how to do it honestly." She looked at him for a long moment. "I believe that too, and that makes it sadder, not better, because we could have had something real. But we will never know what that looked like, because you chose fear over faith. I know. Goodbye, Brian. Goodbye, Amelia." He walked back to his car through the darkness. The conversation had not given him what he wanted, but it had given him what he needed: closure, understanding, a path forward that did not require her forgiveness or her love. And maybe that was the point. Maybe growing up meant accepting that some things you break cannot be fixed. You can only build something new from the pieces. As he drove back to the city, his phone rang. His mother. How did it go? It went well, or as well as it could. She does not forgive me, but she sees the work, and that is enough. I am proud of you, dear. I am not there yet, Mom, but I am trying. That is all any of us can do. Keep trying. Keep showing up. Keep being honest. That night, in his apartment that no longer felt quite so empty, Brian pulled out his journal. He had started keeping one at his therapist's suggestion, a place for honest thoughts with no audience but himself. He wrote, "Today I spoke with Amy. She does not forgive me. She may never forgive me. And I am learning to be okay with that, because forgiveness is not the goal. Being someone who does not require forgiveness, that is the goal. I am not there yet, but I am further than I was yesterday. It was not much, but it was honest. And these days, honest was everything. The year turned. Winter gave way to spring. The foundation expanded into 6 more states. Amy continued her work, traveling and consulting and building something meaningful from the ruins of her trust. Brian remained in the background. He attended board meetings via video. He approved funding increases. He read reports of main streets revitalizing and families keeping generational businesses alive. He dated no one. He focused on therapy and work and learning to be comfortable in his own skin. He visited his mother weekly. He donated anonymously to causes that mattered. He built a life that was not about acquisition or performance, but about quiet contribution. And then, in April, he received an invitation, hand-addressed, child's handwriting. "You are invited to Josh Reed Sullivan's 9th birthday party, April 12th, 2 o'clock, Millbrook Community Center." Brian stared at the invitation for a long time. Josh's 9th birthday. The boy would be 9. A year older than when Brian had last seen him. A year of therapy and healing and learning to trust again. He should not go. It would be inappropriate, painful. But the invitation was in Josh's handwriting. Josh had sent it, which meant Josh wanted him there. Brian called Father O'Brien. "Did you know about this?" he asked. "I did. Amy told me. She did not approve, for what it is worth. But Josh insisted. He wanted to invite you himself. She is allowing it because she is trying to let him make his own choices about forgiveness and boundaries. Should I go? That is your decision. But Brian, if you go, go with no expectations. Do not expect Amy to be warm. Do not expect Josh to run into your arms. Expect nothing except the opportunity to show up with humility and respect." So on April 12th, Brian drove to Millbrook, carrying a carefully chosen gift. Not expensive, just thoughtful. A telescope. Because Josh had once told him he wanted to see the stars up close. The community center was full of children and parents, and the particular chaos of a birthday party. Brian stood in the doorway, uncertain, until he saw Josh. The boy had grown. He was taller, his face losing some of its baby roundness. He wore a shirt with planets on it and was laughing at something a friend had said. Then he saw Brian. For a moment, they just looked at each other. Then Josh walked over slowly, his expression serious. "You came," he said. "You invited me. Thank you for that." Mama said I did not have to. She said it might make me sad. Did it make you sad? Josh considered this. A little, but also, I wanted to see if you were still real. The words hit like arrows. I am real, Josh. I always was. I just lied about parts of myself. That is what Mama said. She said you were a real person who made bad choices. Your mama is very wise. Josh was quiet for a moment. Then, I drew you out of my family picture. The one I gave you. I took a new one and I erased you. Brian knelt down to Josh's level. That makes sense. I broke my promises to you. It is okay to be angry about that. I am not angry anymore. My therapist says I was angry for a while, but now I am just sad because I liked you. I wanted you to be my dad. I know, and I wanted that too, but I messed it up because I was scared and selfish. Are you still scared? Sometimes, but I am trying to be braver, to be honest even when it is hard. Josh studied him with those wise green eyes. Can I hug you? Brian felt his throat close. Only if you want to. So Josh hugged him, a brief, tentative hug that meant everything and nothing. Then he stepped back. Thank you for the telescope, he said, gesturing to where Brian had set the wrapped gift. You have not opened it yet. I know what it is. I can tell by the shape. And because you remembered, I want to see stars. A small smile. That is a good present. Across the room, Amy watched them. Her face was unreadable, but she did not intervene. She let this moment belong to Josh. The party continued. Brian stayed at the edges, watching but not participating. At one point, Amy approached him. Thank you for coming, she said formally. Thank you for allowing it. I did not allow it. Josh allowed it. This was his choice. He seems good. He is healing. We both are. She paused. You look different, more settled somehow. I am trying to be. It is a work in progress. They stood in awkward silence for a moment. Then Amy said, the foundation board wants to host a volunteer day next month, refurbishing a community center in a town that received a grant. Would you be willing to participate? Actually participate, not just write a check? I would like that. Very much. Good. Father O'Brien will send details. She turned to leave, then paused. Brian? Yes. Thank you for the work you are doing. It matters. She met his eyes. You matter, not to me, romantically, but in the world, what you are building. It is good. Hold on to that. I will. After the party, Brian drove back to Manhattan. The visit had been brief, uncomfortable, and utterly necessary. Josh had chosen to invite him, Amy had chosen to allow it, and Brian had chosen to show up with humility and respect. It was not forgiveness, it was not reconciliation, but it was movement. Forward motion, a hairline crack in the wall of consequence. That night, he wrote in his journal, I saw them today. Josh and Amy. Josh hugged me. Amy was civil. It was painful and healing simultaneously. I am learning that those things can coexist, that you can be grateful for scraps when you destroyed the whole feast, that showing up matters even when you are not welcomed with open arms. This is growth. Slow, painful, essential growth. The months continued. The volunteer day came. Brian spent it alongside other foundation members, painting and repairing and working with his hands. Amy was there, professional and distant, but they worked side by side at one point, and the silence was less hostile than it had been. Progress, glacial, grudging progress, but progress nonetheless. 1 year after Josh's birthday party, the foundation held its second anniversary celebration, once again in Millbrook. Once again, with Brian attending at Father O'Brien's invitation, The gathering was larger this time. More towns represented, more success stories, more evidence of what could be accomplished when resources met genuine expertise and mutual respect. Brian arrived early and found a quiet spot to observe. He was not hiding exactly, just not taking up space he had not earned. The afternoon unfolded with speeches and presentations. Business owners shared before and after photos of their establishments. Town councils described renewed foot traffic and economic stability. Amy coordinated it all with grace and competence, her expertise now recognized nationally. At one point, a reporter approached Brian. "Mr. Vance, can we get a statement about the foundation's success? Talk to Amy Reed and the board members. This is their achievement. But you funded it. I provided resources. They provided wisdom and hard work. Their story is the one worth telling." After the speeches, after the formal program ended, the gathering shifted into celebration. Music played, food appeared. The community that had once been dying now danced in the streets it had rebuilt. Brian found himself near the bookstore, watching the scene. Someone approached from behind. "It is beautiful, is it not?" He turned to find Amy beside him, holding a glass of wine, her face softer than he had seen it in 2 years. "It is," he agreed. "All these people, all these towns, thriving because someone was willing to listen and empower rather than control and dictate." She looked at him. "You did that. We did that. All of us. Do not minimize it, Brian. You put your ego aside. You could have made this about yourself. But you did not. That takes strength." They stood in comfortable silence for a moment. "Josh is here somewhere," Amy said. "He is volunteering at the food booth. He wanted to help. He is a good kid." "He is. And he asks about you sometimes. Not often, but sometimes. He wanted to know if you were coming today." Brian's heart stuttered. "What did you tell him?" "That you probably would be. And that it was okay if he wanted to say hello. Is it okay?" Amy turned to face him fully. 2 years ago, you devastated us, broke our trust so completely I thought I would never recover. And for a long time, I was right. I could not imagine ever feeling safe with anyone again." "I understand. But then I watched you actually do the work. Not just say pretty words, but fundamentally change how you showed up in the world. You went to therapy. You addressed your wounds. You used your wealth for good without making it about your redemption. You respected boundaries. You did not push. You just kept showing up with humility." She took a sip of her wine. "And I realized something. I realized that the man I fell in love with, that vulnerable, honest, kind man, he was real. He just was not fully formed yet. He was buried under fear and performance and old wounds. But he was in there, Amelia. I'm not saying I forgive you. I'm not saying I trust you. I'm saying that I see you becoming the person you wanted us to believe you were, and that deserves acknowledgement." Brian felt tears threatening. "Thank you." "You are welcome." She finished her wine. "Now, I need to go check on the volunteers. But Brian, if you want to say hello to Josh, he is at the food booth. I think he would like that." She walked away, leaving Brian standing in the golden afternoon light. He found Josh at the food booth, handing out plates and cups with serious concentration. When the boy looked up and saw him, his face broke into a genuine smile. "Mr. Brian," he called. Not Mr. J, not nothing. Mr. Brian. "Hello, Josh. You are doing important work here. Someone has to make sure everyone gets food." Josh handed a plate to an elderly woman with practiced politeness, then turned back to Brian. "Did you see the presentation? Mama talked about all the towns we helped." "I did see it. Your mama is amazing." "I know." Josh's pride was evident. "She is helping people keep their family businesses, like Grandpa and Grandma would have wanted. She is doing your grandparents proud. And you are too." Josh smiled at that. Then, more quietly, "Are you doing okay? I know." I know what you did was bad, but Mama says you are trying to do better. I am. It is hard, but I am trying. Good. Josh nodded solemnly. I hope you keep trying, because even though you hurt us, I still remember the good times. Fishing, the science project, reading books. Those were real, right? Yes, Josh, those were real. The feelings I had for you and your mama were real. I just wrapped them in lies because I was scared. But what I felt, that was genuine. Okay. Josh seemed satisfied with this answer. Do you want some cookies? They are really good. So Brian ate cookies with Josh while the celebration continued around them. They talked about school and science and Josh's new interest in robotics. They talked about everything except the wound between them. And for just a moment, it felt almost like it used to, almost like family. Later, as the sun began to set and the celebration wound down, Brian prepared to leave. He had driven up just for the day, planning to return to Manhattan that evening, but as he walked to his car, Father O'Brien intercepted him. Stay, the priest said, just for tonight. There is something tomorrow you should be part of. What is it? You will see. Trust me. So Brian checked into the same hotel where he had stayed 2 years ago during those autumn weekends. The room was familiar and strange simultaneously. A ghost of his former self haunted this space. The next morning, he met Father O'Brien at the church. We are going to the bookstore, the priest said. There is a children's reading event. Amy is hosting. You have been invited to volunteer. Invited by whom? By Amy. She called last night after you left. She said, and I quote, that if you were still in town, you might as well make yourself useful. Brian's heart did something complicated. She invited me to read to children. She invited you to help. Reading, organizing, whatever is needed. It is not a declaration of forgiveness. It is just an acknowledgement that you are part of this community's extended network now, for better or worse. The bookstore was already full when they arrived. Children sitting cross-legged on the floor, parents lining the walls, Amy at the center, reading from a picture book with animated voices that made the children laugh. She looked up when Brian entered. Their eyes met. She nodded once, acknowledgement, and continued reading. After her reading, there were craft stations. Brian found himself at a table helping children make bookmarks, cutting, pasting, answering questions about what books he liked. Josh appeared at his table. I am supposed to help here too. Then we will work together. They spent the next hour side by side, helping children, laughing at jokes, existing in the same space without the weight of trauma crushing everything. At one point, Josh said quietly, "This is nice, working with you. It is nice for me too. Maybe we could do this again sometime. Just help at events. I mean, if Mama says it is okay, I would like that very much. If your Mama says it is okay." After the event ended, after the families left and the bookstore quieted, Amy approached Brian. "Thank you for helping," she said. "Thank you for inviting me. It was not forgiveness. I know. It was just, you were in town. The event needed volunteers. It made practical sense. I understand." She studied him for a moment. Do you understand what I'm trying to do here? I think so. You are allowing me to exist in your world, not intimately, not as someone you trust, but as someone who can contribute, someone who can show up and be useful without being destructive. Exactly. She paused. Is that enough for you? Brian thought about it, really thought about it. 2 years ago, I would have said no. I would have wanted more. I would have pushed for reconciliation, for romance, for fairy tale redemption. But now I understand that this, being allowed to show up, to help, to exist in your orbit even at a distance, this is a gift, an undeserved gift. So yes, it is enough. It is more than enough. Amy nodded slowly. Good, because that is all I have to offer. Maybe forever, maybe just for now, but that is all there is. Then that is all I need. She turned to leave, then paused. Brian, I'm going to say something, and I need you to hear it clearly. Okay, I have been watching you for 2 years, watching you work, watching you change, watching you respect boundaries and do the hard internal work without expectation of reward. And I want you to know, I see it. I see the man you are becoming, and that man, he is someone worth knowing. Brian's throat tightened. Thank you. Not the man you were, not Jay, not even the Brian Vance who first walked into that diner, but the man you are right now, today, after 2 years of genuine effort. That man is good. She met his eyes. Hold on to that, even if I never trust you romantically again. Even if Josh and I remain at arm's length forever, hold on to the knowledge that you became someone worth being. She left him standing in the bookstore, her words echoing in the space between shelves. That evening, sitting in his hotel room before the drive back to Manhattan, Brian pulled out his phone. He opened his photos. The old ones of Amy and Josh had been archived long ago, too painful to see daily, but now he scrolled through them. The autumn festival, Josh's solar system project, Amy laughing in the bookstore, the three of them as a makeshift family. Those moments had been real, built on lies. Yes, but the feelings, the connection, the love, those had been genuine. He would never get them back. That life was gone, but the man who had lived those moments, he was not gone. He was just growing up, finally, painfully, learning that love is not about being perfect. It is about being honest, and that sometimes the cost of our dishonesty is losing the very thing we were afraid to lose. But we keep going anyway. We keep trying. We keep showing up, not because we will be rewarded with what we want, but because showing up is itself the reward. Being present, being honest, being someone who can be trusted to do no further harm. That, Brian was learning, was what it meant to be an adult. Not success, not wealth, not even love. Just showing up consistently with truth and humility and the willingness to accept that some things cannot be fixed, only learned from. The text arrived on a random Tuesday in October. Brian was in a board meeting when his phone buzzed with a message from a number he knew by heart but rarely saw. Amy. My name is Brian Vance. I would like to take you to dinner, Amelia Reed. As myself. Would you be willing to meet me? Just coffee. Just talking. After 3 years, I think we might have things to say. Brian read it 3 times, then a 4th, then excused himself from the meeting. In a quiet hallway, he typed back, I would like that very much. When? This weekend, Saturday evening, same diner where we first met. I will be there. He stood in the corporate hallway of his building, phone in hand, heart racing. 3 years. 3 years of work and growth and learning to be honest. 3 years of respecting boundaries and doing the work without expectation. And now this, an invitation, just coffee, just talking, but from her, initiated by her. He called his therapist. Do not make this about romantic reconciliation, Dr. Foster warned. Go with an open heart and 0 expectations. Listen more than you speak. Be honest about where you are. Do not push for anything beyond what she offers. I know. Do you? Because, Brian, you have done incredible work. You have become someone new. Do not undo that by falling back into old patterns of neediness and fear. I hear you. Saturday came slowly and quickly simultaneously. Brian drove to the diner, arriving 15 minutes early just to sit with his nerves. The same booth where they had first met 3 years ago. The same server, Martha, now walking with a cane but still sharp-eyed and kind. You, she said, recognizing him, you are the one who broke that nice lady's heart. I am. I am also the one who has spent 3 years trying to be better. Martha studied him. You look different. Less tight. More real. That is the kindest assessment I have gotten. When Amy arrived, exactly on time, Brian stood. They looked at each other across 3 years of hurt and healing. "Hello, Brian," she said. "Hello, Amelia." They sat, ordered coffee, and for a few moments just breathed in the same space. "Thank you for coming," Amy finally said. "Thank you for inviting me. I have been thinking a lot lately, about us, about what happened, about who we both were and who we have become." She wrapped her hands around her coffee mug. "I watched your interview yesterday, the one you did last month for that documentary about redemption. You saw that? I did. You talked about how betrayal teaches you more about yourself than it does about the person who hurt you. How being hurt showed you your capacity to heal. How losing something made you understand what you had taken for granted. Those things are true. They are. And watching you talk, 3 years later, still doing the work, still being honest, I realized something." She met his eyes. "I realized I have forgiven you." Brian felt the words land in his chest. "Amy, not forgiven in the sense that I forget what happened. Not forgiven in the sense that I would ever trust you the way I did before. But forgiven in the sense that I no longer carry anger. I no longer need you to suffer. I see you as a human who made terrible choices from deep wounds, and who has spent years genuinely trying to heal those wounds. I do not deserve your forgiveness. That is not how forgiveness works. I did not forgive you for your sake. I forgave you for mine. Because carrying that anger was exhausting. And because I needed to prove to myself that I could extend grace even to someone who hurt me deeply." They sat in silence for a moment. Then Amy continued, "But here is the thing, Brian. Forgiveness is not the same as reconciliation. I forgive you, but I do not want to try to rebuild a romantic relationship. Too much has happened. Too much trust was broken. I understand. Do you? Because I need you to really understand. I'm not saying not yet. I'm saying no. I'm saying that the romantic possibility that existed 3 years ago, it died, and we cannot resurrect it." "I understand," Brian repeated, "and I accept that completely." Amy seemed surprised. "You do?" "I do. Because I have learned something these past 3 years. I learned that love is not about getting what you want. It is about wanting what is best for the person you love. And what is best for you is protecting your peace, your healing, your boundaries." He took a breath. "You have built a beautiful life. The bookstore is thriving. Josh is healthy and happy. You are doing meaningful work through the foundation. You are whole again. And I would never ask you to risk that wholeness for the possibility of us." Amy's eyes filled with tears. "Thank you for saying that. I mean it. These past 3 years, I have watched you from a distance, watched you become stronger, more confident, more yourself, and I am so proud of you, so grateful that my mistakes did not destroy you, so relieved that you found your way back to joy." "I am grateful too," Amy said, "for the healing, for the lessons, for the proof that I can survive betrayal and come out stronger." They talked for 2 hours about their lives, their growth, the foundation's continued success. Josh's progress in school and therapy, Margaret's health, Father O'Brien's retirement plans, everything and nothing. It felt like friendship, tentative, careful friendship, but friendship nonetheless. As they prepared to leave, Amy said, "I would like to stay in touch, not constantly, but occasionally. Updates about the foundation, maybe coffee a few times a year. Is that something you would want?" "Yes," Brian said simply. "Very much yes. Not romantic, not even close friends. Just 2 people who share history and have learned to coexist peacefully." That sounds perfect. Outside, in the parking lot, they hugged goodbye. Brief, friendly, and completely different from the passionate embraces of 3 years ago. "Take care of yourself, Brian," Amy said. "You too, Amelia." She drove away. Brian stood in the parking lot, watching her taillights disappear, and felt something settle in his chest. Peace. Real peace. Not the peace of getting what you want, the peace of accepting what is. He called his mother on the drive home. "How did it go?" Margaret asked. "It went well. She has forgiven me, but she does not want reconciliation." "How do you feel about that?" Brian thought about it. Grateful, sad, but mostly grateful. She could have held on to anger forever. Instead, she chose grace. That is a gift. "I am proud of you, dear, for accepting her boundaries without trying to change her mind. I love her too much to push. Her peace matters more than my wants." That night, in his apartment, Brian wrote in his journal for the last time. "Today I had coffee with Amy. She forgives me but does not want romance. And I accept that completely. I spent 3 years becoming someone who could deserve her love. But I learned that deserving love and receiving it are different things. And that is okay. Because this was never about winning her back. It was about becoming someone who could look at himself in the mirror without shame. It was about proving that people can change, that wounds can heal, that we can make terrible choices and still build something good from the aftermath. I lost her. That will always hurt, but I found myself in the process. And maybe that is the real story. Not the romance, not the fairy tale ending, but the man who learned to be honest, who learned to take responsibility, who learned that redemption is not a destination, but a daily practice. I'm closing this journal tonight. Not because the work is done, the work is never done, but because I no longer need to track my progress toward a goal. I'm simply living honestly now, showing up authentically, being the person I want to be. That is enough, more than enough. It is everything. 6 months later, Brian was in his office when his assistant buzzed. "There is a woman here to see you, Amy Reed. She says she does not have an appointment, but send her up immediately." Amy appeared in his office doorway 5 minutes later, looking nervous but determined. "I am sorry to drop in unannounced," she said. "You never need an appointment. What is wrong? Is Josh okay?" "Josh is fine. Everyone is fine. I needed to tell you something in person." Brian gestured to a chair. He sat across from her, waiting. "I have been dating someone," Amy said. Brian felt something twist in his chest, but kept his face neutral. "That is wonderful. You deserve happiness." "It is wonderful. He is kind, honest, a teacher at Josh's school. We have been seeing each other for 4 months. She took a breath. "And I wanted you to hear it from me, because you deserve to know, and because I needed to see. I needed to see if I could tell you and have it be okay." "It is okay," Brian said, and meant it. "I am genuinely happy for you, Amelia." "Are you? Really?" "Yes, really. Because I love you. Not the way I did 3 years ago. Not romantically anymore. But I love you in the sense that I want good things for you. And if this teacher makes you happy, then I am happy." Amy smiled, relief evident. "His name is David. He teaches 5th grade. He loves books. He is patient with Josh. He knows our whole story, and he has been incredibly respectful of it. He sounds perfect. He is not perfect, but he is honest and kind and present, and that is all I need." They talked for a while longer, about David, about Josh's response, about Amy's cautious optimism, about her continued healing. As she prepared to leave, Brian said, "Amy, thank you for telling me in person. That took courage. I owed you that. You have been nothing but respectful for 3 years. You deserve to hear it directly." At the door, she paused. "Can I ask you something?" "Anything." "Are you happy?" Really happy. Brian considered the question. I am content. I have meaningful work, good relationships. I'm honest with myself and others. I'm no longer afraid all the time. Is that happiness? I do not know, but it is peace, and peace is pretty wonderful. She smiled. It is. Peace is underrated. After she left, Brian stood at his office window overlooking the city. 3 years ago, learning that Amy was dating someone else would have destroyed him. Today, it made him genuinely happy. Because he had grown up. Finally, painfully, completely. He would always love her. That would never change. But loving her now meant celebrating her happiness even when it did not include him. And that, perhaps, was the real happy ending. Not getting the girl, not riding off into the sunset, but becoming someone who could love without possessing, who could care without controlling, who could accept loss without being destroyed by it. Brian turned from the window and returned to his desk. He had work to do. The foundation needed his attention. His mother was coming for dinner. His therapist had assigned him homework about his continued growth. Life. Ordinary. Meaningful. Honest life. It was not the story he had imagined, but it was a good story nonetheless, and sometimes a good story is all we need. I hope you enjoyed today's story. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss more stories like this. Leave a like and comment below what you thought of the story. See you in the next video.